Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you can call me Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. So today we'll be discussing why you should play the meta to climb, and we're going to be using both of my Grandmaster's accounts for examples. And we're going to discuss, first, the struggles I had early on and why I wasn't climbing, a situation a lot of you might actually be in right now. And then we're going to start talking about what I did and what I changed to reach Grandmaster on these accounts, why it worked, and how you can do it as well. So I think that a lot of people, at least from the comments I've seen, are in a situation where you kind of feel stuck and you don't know what to do. So I think this video can help you out, and I hope you guys enjoy. Alright guys, real quickly before the video starts, I just wanted to say that if you are just here to learn why you should be playing the meta and how you should play it, so that means my suggestions for who you should play, this is specifically aimed at those DPS players who feel like they don't know what to do. I will add an annotation to skip to the second half of the video where that starts. So guys, with that being said, so this is, if you don't want to hear my story essentially, no offense taken. So with that being said guys, please enjoy the video. First we'll be talking about the meta in a general sense and kind of what it is and what it means. And then I'm going to discuss what the current meta is and why that's actually important. So the meta for Overwatch, at least for me, generally refers to team compositions. And the reason it just refers to team compositions is that we could go into strategies and like meta strats, but I think that's a little too advanced for the points I'm trying to get across, and I don't know them well enough to really go over that. So it can best be described as what is currently the standard or the go-to hero compositions in this current patch. And you'll notice that I said patch, and it's because as patches roll out, there are new changes, and the meta kind of adapts and evolves to find the ideal composition. So right now the meta is filled with tanks. If you haven't noticed, there's been a lot of complaining, a lot of people love it, and we'll kind of see what happens, but generally you're going to have 3 tanks, 1 DPS, and 2 supports. Or you'll just have 4 tanks and 2 supports. Now this has been the meta for the vast majority of Season 3, but with the Symmetra update, we've seen actually an increase in the numbers of Symmetras and Torbjorns, which is kind of changing the meta, and it's just a good example of a shift in the meta, and I just wanted to make a point of it. Now, the meta is important to understand and pay attention to because it exists for one reason, and that reason is that it works and it wins games. That's kind of 2 reasons. But most statistics currently come from professional games and tournaments, and people sometimes disregard them and they'll say, we aren't pros, right? And I hate that because there's a ton of value in what the pros do, even if you're only in silver, and there's a lot you can learn from them. And so at the start of Season 3, I was playing mainly DPS. This is something I was extremely comfortable with, and in Seasons 1 and 2, I really I relied on my aiming that I kind of brought from Counter-Strike to just out-aim my enemies in 1v1s, and I was confident that I was going to do the same thing in Season 3. But guess what? To my surprise, there was almost no enemy DPSs that I could shoot in half the games, and then the other half where there was an enemy DPS, I couldn't get close to them because of all the tanks. My win rate went down from 60% in Seasons 1 and 2 to around 38% in Season 3. So I was losing a lot of games, and I knew that I had to change something. In Seasons 1 and 2, I was kind of able to abuse the 2-2-2 meta in a way that allowed me to just pick off the enemies one by one, whether it was a support or another DPS, and this was mainly reliant on my aiming skill. And as I said, this was in the 2-2-2 meta, and this worked because generally the 2 tanks were already occupied either by another DPS or by my own tanks. And this gave me the ability to kind of flank and do a little bit more of what I wanted to. But in this new meta, what happened was I simply couldn't do the same things I was doing in the last season, but I was still trying and I was failing. And as I said, I knew something had to change, and I decided to take a better look at the meta and see what people were doing. And I realized that in almost all of my games, I had a Reinhardt, a Zarya, a Roadhog, and a D.Va. At least 3 of those, and then I almost always had an Ana, I sometimes had a Soldier, and I sometimes had a Lucio. And the point was that I knew I had to pick one of these heroes to play, and I was already playing Soldier, and I was struggling. And I said, okay, I needed to go to a tank. Now, my choices were kind of limited because I really don't like Reinhardt, so I decided to go with D.Va. And it was at that point when I just started winning games that I realized I'm an idiot. Because I was so stuck in the past. I was so stuck with being stubborn and thinking that I was such a good player that I could just carry myself no matter what I played, whether it was Widowmaker, McCree, Soldier, Reaper, didn't matter. I was good enough to carry myself. And I just wasn't, because the meta kind of didn't allow me to do the things that I was so used to doing. And those are the things that made me a good player. And when I couldn't do those anymore, I had no other options. And my only real option was to switch what I was playing, and it ended up working like really well. And I decided to sort of test my theory of switching to a more meta hero like D.Va by playing on my alternate account, which previously I had only been in Diamond for Season 2. So I placed this account into Diamond again, and I started climbing my way up. And I was only playing D.Va. I think I started at 34, like 75, so it was actually really close to Masters. And I just started winning games. And I was winning a lot of games. And actually, right now, currently, and by the time I reached Grandmaster, I actually had an 80% win rate with D.Va. So suddenly, I went from 38% win rate on my main with Soldier to 80% win rate on my alternate account with D.Va. And this is when I realized, like, oh, the meta, it works. And I really should pay more attention to it, and I should try to follow it if I can, because I love winning so much. And I know some of you guys are in this exact same spot. You're losing games with the heroes you're comfortable with. Maybe some of them aren't quite in the meta right now, and you're trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. And so this is where we get to like the why you should play the meta. And I think at the end of the day, like as I said, it just works. And the reason is, currently you have all these tanks, right? And what do you need to kill tanks? A lot of damage. But with a hero like Ana and a hero like Lucio, first of all, Ana is able to do so much burst healing to all of the tanks that she can almost keep them up indefinitely on her own. As a matter of fact, recently, and in some games where you get stubborn people, one Ana is all it takes to solo heal, right? If you have just one support and it's an Ana, you can be fairly confident because of how good she is right now. When you pair that up with something like a Lucio for his really good defensive ultimate and also his AoE healing, or you pair it up with someone like a Zenyatta for his defensive ultimate and his healing, you get this really insane burst healing capabilities and sustain because of your tanks, because of your shields. And what this does is it forces the other team to adapt to the exact same meta, to the exact same hero composition, to the either 4 tank or 3 tank with Ana to be able to fight you. And oftentimes people will ask, what's the counter to an Ana? And most of the time people are going to say another Ana. And that's sort of where we are right now in this meta, is that you need to be playing these heroes if you want to climb. I tried for so long, and I was getting so disappointed in myself because I couldn't do it. But then when I switched to D.Va, and when I started playing more meta heroes, I realized it just works, right? When you sort of fit in and you find your own groove with the new hero, right? I had to learn D.Va. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning, but I was still somehow winning, but I had no idea what I was doing. And even now I feel like there's still so much for me to learn, but at the end of the day, the difference that came from changing from Soldier to D.Va has been incredible. And I now consider myself an extremely good D.Va player, and I'm following the meta, and it's something, that I didn't want to do, but I did it because I was so tired of losing, and I was able to rely on a lot of the other skills I had, like my game sense and just my general game knowledge, and my ability to work with a team, and I was able to use that to sort of carry me up so while I was learning D.Va, and now I feel so confident that she's one of my favorite heroes to play. Alright guys, I want to sum things up with why you should play the meta and how you should play it, and then I also want to give some suggestions. So the reason that you should actually play the meta, especially if you're looking to rank up. So if you have that competitive mindset, you're not winning and you want to win, the meta should be played because it just flat out works, right? And these team compositions that are the standard or the go-to or the meta, they've been purposely created because they do work so well together. So, there's pro teams and there's strategists and there's people who spend hours trying to figure out these compositions and what's going to work the best with the new changes. And just because you aren't a pro, it doesn't mean you could disregard this information. So take advantage of how insanely good these compositions work together, because you have to remember, everything about them is there for a reason, because they all work so well together. From the shields to the burst healing to the sustain, all of it works well together, and that's why it's there. So don't be stuck on the past comps like I was. Learn to adapt and try to stick to the meta if you're struggling to win. Alright, so now we get into how you should play the meta, and here are my suggestions for the heroes. This is probably what a lot of you were looking for, and I just want to point this out. Right now, the meta is really favoring tank mains and support mains. So if you were previously a tank or a support player, you're probably in a pretty happy place. But a lot of DPS players, they've been like relocated or whatever, like they don't know what they're doing, or they're like me and they kind of felt lost. So this mainly might actually be for them. So first, let's start off with Reinhardt. He's insanely good, and he always has been. So if you're looking for a hero that's almost always going to be in the meta, I highly suggest learning him. Right now, any game without a Reinhardt is almost always met with my team saying something like, well, we lost, or rip, or GG, or whatever, because he is just so extremely useful. And also D.Va. So obviously this is the route I went. A lot of people hate me for this, but I think she's extremely fun to play, especially when you learn her. She has a lot of really fun mechanics and capabilities, especially with her defense matrix, and when you use her boost to like bump away a teammate who's been hooked by the enemy Roadhog, it's one of the most satisfying feelings in the world. Same thing with getting her ultimate down. When you can consistently wipe the team or just get a few kills with the ultimate, it actually is really, really fun. So I highly suggest D.Va to those DPS players who are struggling to climb right now, might maybe playing something like McCree or Pharah. So really, I would take a good look at D.Va if you're one of those DPS players. Now, we also have Ana. I know I call her Anna, but I think it's pronounced Ana. So, by far, Ana is one of the most powerful supports in the game, right? I think she is the most powerful. You've got her sleep dart and her grenade. So, she's kind of overpacked, like, with all these overpowered goodies. And, I think that people who actually have good aim and come from that DPS role will really enjoy Ana because she is a sniper at heart, which makes her really lethal at long range if you are looking to put out a little damage as a support. This is something that I think Lucio kind of lacks because he doesn't have a ton of damage. So Ana is really this awesome choice for people who want that mix of a DPS player and this burst healing capability with a really strong ultimate. Now, we also have Roadhog, and Roadhog sometimes gets switched out with Zarya, and so Roadhog right now is a great choice because he is so good because of his hook. And I know it's broken, but when you have someone flying around like D.Va, sometimes all you need is a Roadhog to counter her. And also I want to say Zarya as well. In this same sort of category, Zarya and Roadhog are really good for DPS players in terms of tanks. Now I really don't suggest a DPS player go Reinhardt because it's completely different in my opinion. But something like a Zarya or a Roadhog in this meta, so Zarya's got her bubbles, which are really useful for a lot of engages, and then Roadhog's got his hook. And when you combine those, not only do they actually counter each other, right? So if you hook someone and then a Zarya shields them, right, you can't do anything. So not only do they counter each other, but they're really good when played in tandem. So if you are looking to climb, I really do suggest learning Roadhog if you can master the hooks, right? Because a good Roadhog can single-handedly win games just from his hooks alone. Because all he needs to do is hook a support, kill them, and that starts the team fight, and you can snowball from there. Now, for those DPS players who really want to stick to DPS, I do obviously suggest Soldier 76. He is currently in the meta. He's what pros are playing. He's what a lot of high-level players are playing. He's what I tried, but you have to understand that his role changed. Who his identity and sort of where he is in this meta, it's different. He's really a tank killer now. He's not one that can go out there and flank around and kill DPS because everyone's clumped up with all these tanks. And because of this, because his role kind of changed for me personally, I didn't really like playing anymore. But I do understand that he is extremely good at taking down shields and dishing out that consistent damage that you need against all these tanks. So if you are going to play any kind of DPS, so people who are playing Genji, Tracer's still relatively good, McCree, Pharah, Reaper, all those, I really do suggest Soldier over them because of how powerful he is. And then finally we have Lucio and Zenyatta, right? These guys have kind of always been in the meta. They've been sort of that, like an off support, like that extra support, when you have 1-2, first one is almost always going to be Ana. I always suggest her. And then you could kind of choose, do we want a Lucio, do we want a Zenyatta? And they're both great picks. And the reason is that with Drop the Beat and Transcendence, you sort of are able to save your team from all these potential team wipes that come from enemy ultimates that you otherwise, because Ana can't stop those, right? She's got nothing. All she could do is like make someone more powerful and maybe save their life. And that's why they're still great picks. And if you use Lucio and Zenyatta, in combination with Ana, you have the most powerful support comp in the game by far. And so with that being said, if you do have questions about what you should play, if you're struggling or anything like that, feel free to ask. I'd love to answer them. But seriously, guys, I hope you guys have a happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you so much for all the support. I hope you guys learned something new. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Take it easy. and peace.